Start clean with Clorox, because Clorox delivers a powerful clean every time. Because messes happen. Because... I got a charcoal mask. Great, because why would I put that on my face when I could drop it in my sink? This is what I get for multitasking. Ugh, why is charcoal so sticky?
Hello?
Hey, Janice. I am so sorry. I thought I was on mute. No, we don't need to reschedule. I'll just stay off camera. Ooh, yeah, that happens. So start clean with Clorox. Use Clorox products as directed.
Sometimes your cat can be a mystery, like when they get so attached to certain cardboard boxes. But when you use Fresh Step cat litter, there's no question that you're making your cat happy, thanks to amazing odor control. Fresh Step clumping cat litters prevent stinky crumbles and make scooping easy by locking in liquid and odor immediately. That means you can keep your house clean and your bond strong. There's no mystery here. Find Fresh Step cat litter at a store near you. Fresh Step is a registered trademark of the Clorox Pet Products Company. Certain trademarks used under license from the Procter & Gamble Company or its affiliates.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
Have you found the keys to unlock your best trip? On a Trafalgar tour, you unlock more than just the world. We give you the key to let down your walls and make lifelong friends. The key to discovering hidden talents and fresh perspectives. From one-of-a-kind experiences to iconic destinations, Trafalgar gives you the keys to unlock your best self. Discover more at trafalgar.com/unlock. That's TRAFALGAR.com/unlock. Tour differently.
How's it going? And welcome back to On the Wire, a proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at OnTheWirePod. I am Adam Howe, and as always, I am joined by the 2020 TGFBI champion, as a reminder, Kevin Hastings. Hey, Kevin, we had one FAAB down, 30 to go. How you feeling?
I feel like there's 300 to go and that we've already done 30 or more. And it's been more lineup changes than FAAB. We've only had one FAAB period, but every time I go through and change my lineups, there's more news and I got to go through everything again. It's been a crazy 3 days.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points, both, on Twitter and in the Pitcher List Discord. Just the fact that since the game started on Thursday, at least in NFBC, we had that extra ability to switch out hitters. Almost turned our leagues into like daily moves leagues. So that was an interesting difference for NFBC leagues, at least from what I saw. It was just all of a sudden you're like, all right, maybe the Nats are going to play a game. All right, we'll have them all in. In 3 minutes later, you're like, nope, got to go back into all my lineups, switch them all over again before any of the games start. So I appreciate you bringing that to, to at least my attention and everybody else's.
Yeah, and then my big thing was don't forget to put these
guys
Red Sox and Orioles back in on Friday.
All right. Last week we did our FAAB run, just Kevin and myself, but we did say that we'd be joined by some of the best in the industry throughout the season. And to stay true to our word, we are honored to have with us one of the best, Mike Kurland, the lineup king himself. I've appointed him that. He did not self-appoint him that. He's here with us to help break down your FAAB options this week. Mike, of course, can be heard regularly on his own podcast, the Bases Loaded Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and is well known for breaking down lineups throughout the spring training and continuing the tradition into the regular season. You can find links to his work by following him on Twitter, which you should already be doing, at Mike_Kurland. And you can find the link to that in this episode's description as well. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time to being our very first guest of the regular season. And besides all the stuff I just mentioned, what else do you have going on and what should everybody be looking for?
First off, appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to come on and talk baseball. And I feel like I just managed to stay busy without even knowing what I have planned or what's going to happen. And you mentioned we have 30 more FAAB periods. I think I'm going to need all 30 with how my TGFBI team is looking, as we previously discussed prior to recordings. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I look forward to sharing all my secrets and targets with you since you're in my league tonight. So that's going to be even more fun.
I'm taking plenty of notes. Yeah.
Don't, because apparently if I get them, they're going to get injured. So avoid.
Yeah, I think that'll be a common topic of conversation as we run down some of the options for everybody out there listening, because Mike very well might be bidding on all of them this week. But we'll get into that a little bit later. First and foremost, we got a couple of news and notes that we want to discuss. Again, when we talk about news and notes here on this podcast, we're not talking about all the overall news and notes of Major League Baseball. We're going to try to only keep to the things that might affect your FAAB bidding or just things that are going to affect your lineup that you might have to consider picking up a guy you might not have thought about previously. So first and foremost, earlier this week on opening day, it was announced Trevor Rosenthal, the presumed closer of the Oakland A's, would be put on the 10-day IL, and AJ Puck was demoted as well. So that put Jake Diekman into the supposed closer spot, at least temporarily, who then got blown up yesterday in his opportunity. My question to you guys here is we'll talk a little bit more about this in our closer section, but is Diekman still the guy? Because it was announced that he would be the guy that the number one choice. Is he still your number one choice in Oakland? Kevin, what do you think?
I'm not so sure. He's such a good lefty coming out of the bullpen and has been for a few years that I can see him being used earlier in games. I know they've said he's going to be the first guy to get an opportunity in the ninth, but they have other options. Romo's there, Trevino's there, and I'm not going to go out of my way to go after those guys, but if you have an open spot, I can see throwing a couple bucks just in case.
So, Mike, my question is, are you going to rebid on Jake Diekman after dropping him last week in TGFBI?
Just to further rub salt in the wound.
Well, there was 10 other guys that did it.
Yeah.
But the best part was, FAAB ran a day before opening day. Or wait, was it?
It was 4 days before.
4 days. Sorry, I was...
Yeah.
I'm losing track of time, but my point is, it ran just before opening day, and then suddenly, oh, by the way, shoulder inflammation. Whoa, what the heck happened there? So I don't know, because I saw the bids on closers and closers to be, and a part of me doesn't want to blow my FAAB on a guy that it is a shoulder injury though for Rosenthal. So that is something to keep in mind, because those can linger, especially inflammation of sorts. But I'd rather just let someone else bid all that money. I don't know. I'm really honestly torn. I have a lot of thinking to do in the next 24 hours because I obviously need a closer now. Romo does sound more intriguing given the potential cost there. And I was thinking the same thing, like, oh, Diekman's a lefty, but they do have two other good lefties, or at least decent lefties in, I can't say Choleric, and so good I can't say their names, and Goodwan. Yeah, almost a good one. Okay. Oh, yeah, like it's a joke. But yeah, so they have two other lefties in the pen, meaning that they can spare Diekman late in games, I believe. That's how I'm looking at it. So although I do like Romo and Wendelken on like speculations, I feel like you want to save some money on the off chance that one of them do get some opportunities, I do think Diekman's the guy. I'm just afraid to blow a big FAAB on him because I think it might be a short-term deal anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, closers did go for quite a bit of money in the first FAAB run, at least in TGFBI. Ian Kennedy maxed out at $182. Jose Alvarado went for at a max of 79 in one league. You go down, of course, we have Tanner Scott, who went for a whopping $400 in a single league. And I think he crossed the $200 mark in another league as well. So there's definitely a lot of hype when it comes to closers, because there were plenty of teams that maybe they didn't tank closing, but like it's such a crapshoot this year, as we've talked about ad nauseum. And I know a lot of other people have as well. So it is scary to put all your eggs into that basket just to get an Easter reference in there somehow in the closer situation. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. Speaking of closers, Alex Reyes was named, or at least expected to be, the St. Louis closer, at least to start the season. I do believe that they do want to get Jordan Hicks back into the role at some point this season, but there's no timetable into what that might be. Alex Reyes, if he's available, he's got to be a big time bid this weekend, FAAB, don't you think?
I would say so. He would be you want to talk about, you mentioned Diekman. I'd rather have Reyes, to give you an idea. I think Reyes has more long-term appeal because even if he's not the closer the whole year, I think he'll at least split the opportunities with Hicks. I don't think Hicks is going to pitch back-to-back games at all this year. So right there, even if Hicks gets a save, Reyes might be the next man up the next day type of thing. So I think Reyes will have relevance all year. And even if on the off chance he doesn't save any games after a certain point, the ratios, the strikeouts, he's one of those guys. He's like this year's Devin Williams. Like he's just that type of player Alex Reyes is. So he's a guy that I think will hold value all year long, one way or another.
Yeah, I was saying it earlier in the season, earlier in the off season. I was targeting Alex Reyes in a bunch of places, and it's mostly because he seems to be that reliever that can still put up almost better numbers than a lot of the starter options, especially where he was going in drafts. And this is just an added bonus. I do have him in a couple of leagues, including my TGFBI league. So he is 100% rostered across TGFBI. So not an option there for FAAB bids. And so if you're looking at him in a 12-team league or lower, I think it's a pretty good target for you. Josh Donaldson left his season opener with a hamstring issue, shocker, placed on the IL Saturday finally after a lot of speculation. Twins did recall Brent Rooker to take his place on the roster. My question is less about Donaldson and more about Rooker. Kevin, is Rooker somebody worth throwing a buck at, or even more in this upcoming FAAB bid?
I think he's worth throwing a buck at, but I don't think we're going to get him for a buck. I think he's going to go for a little bit of money. Maybe it's surprising to some people. He got a lot of run in the spring, and Mike will be able to let us know more about that for sure. But there was all the talk about Kirilloff, and then in spring, a lot of people were talking, no, Rooker overtook him, and they both got sent down, but Rooker's the one came right back up. I think he may cost a little more than we expect, so I don't know if that couple of bucks will get him.
Rooker. He was actually outperforming Kirilloff at one point, and I think he must have slowed down towards the end because I honestly stopped monitoring his production. But he was a guy that was playing relatively often and was earning those reps, and then suddenly just to go from playing almost, it was like every other game, it seems like, obviously it makes sense to play every other game. He played a couple in a row towards the end as well. And then Jake Cave gets it, and Jake Cave is who replaced Arias, moved from left field to third base yesterday with Donaldson getting injured. Cave entered the game in left field and then started today's game in left field as well. So maybe Cave is the guy that if you want Rooker, shoot for Cave. And honestly, Cave might just get just as much playing time, maybe more. But yeah, I'm not gonna, and I'm the one who needs any type of healthy bodies. Because guess who, Josh, we talk about Trevor Rosenthal. Josh Donaldson is also on my TGFBI team. And I need bodies, and Rooker's just not one guy. I think the upside's there, but I think it's, again, I think it's a short-term fix. Because I think ultimately the idea is to get Kirilloff back in there. So I don't want to spend money on guys that I think are simply short-term fixes when, again, beggars can't be choosers. I get that, but I'd rather, and we'll name a few people later on that I'd rather just take a shot on, thinking that there's some sustained potential in terms of production and reasoning to roster them.
Yeah, and also, fortunately, this isn't a calf issue for Josh Donaldson. With it being a hamstring, maybe we see him relatively quickly. Doesn't mean we'll see him for a long period of time, but we should see him back fairly soon, I think.
For Mike's sake, here's hoping. All right. Ramon Laureano he left yesterday's game. That's Friday's game, as he had a left wrist injury. We're still looking to see any kind of updates on that. We're expected to see something on Friday. It does say that there's no structural damage into that as well. Is there anybody, if Laureano's to miss at least like maybe say the first half of next week, you can take him out of your lineups and NFBC leagues for that period and hope he comes back for the second half. Is there anybody that's going to get any run in Laureano's place for the Athletics in that time period worth considering? Mike, have you noticed anybody?
I think for the short term, it's going to be Chad Pinder. I know Kai Tom is very intriguing, but I think it's Pinder and Pinder's job to lose, essentially, if there were going to be a brief period in terms of relevance while Laureano's out. But as you mentioned, I don't think it's a long-term issue. I think Laureano's a guy you probably sit in any type of NFBC format where you're Monday through Friday, because risks can linger. And if you watch the replay, it doesn't look terrible. He didn't even look like he was in any real discomfort or anything, Laureano. I'm speaking about. I wouldn't think it's a long-term deal. He's day-to-day. Maybe he takes a couple more games off. But again, risks linger. I would definitely probably play it safe and bench him for that first half if you can. But in a full-on weekly, I haven't made that decision yet. I want to see if we get any more updates tomorrow. But yeah, I would say it's Chad Pinder. That's a long way of saying that.
All right.
I agree with that 100%. And what is interesting is Oakland has 7 games this week. So he might be worth a couple bucks because it's all about plate appearances. And he made a spectacular defensive play the other day. That's the type of thing that will help keep him in the lineup, especially when they're losing a guy like Laureano. So Pinder might be worth a look with them having 7 games this week.
I think Pinder getting any kind of long time run would make a lot of people very happy, as he's been the focus of many in the industry for the last year or two. All right, the Nats are hopeful to host the Braves next week. It is worth keeping an eye on that, as it may affect FAAB runs and replacing players that may or may not play on both teams. We've already lost the Juan Sotos and the Scherzers of the world for the last couple of days. Now we could risk also losing the Acuñas and the Freemans and what have you for next week. So is there anything here worth monitoring beyond literally just monitoring, Kevin?
I think we just have to pay really close attention. And there is one 1 p.m. Eastern game on Monday, and that's going to make it rough. Then the Atlanta-Washington game is scheduled as of right now for 4:05 p.m. Eastern time. So that one game early, it's Minnesota and Detroit, so that could affect some things for some people setting their lineups. But yeah, it sounds optimistic from the things we have heard over the past day or so. I think I've heard a couple of players actually say they believe they're going to be playing on Monday, but there's nothing else we can do than just monitor, just like you said.
Yep, pretty much. It's strictly a monitoring game at this point. They almost played the game on Friday, Saturday. So
yeah,
if they were that close to even allowing it, I don't see why they don't push for Monday. And assuming there's no new positives, assuming they do their contract tracing properly, I think Monday is very realistic in terms of expectations to see the games get going for these teams.
All right, and then a couple other injuries, or at least players leaving games. Brian Hayes was pulled with wrist discomfort on Saturday. Update is supposedly coming on Sunday per manager Derek Shelton. Are either one of you guys worried about this? And if so, is there anybody in Pittsburgh worth bidding on in his place? Kevin, what do you think?
No, I have him on. He's rostered on a couple of my teams, and I'm hopeful that he's okay. And it's another monitor situation. I don't see trying to replace him with someone from Pittsburgh if he is going to miss time. I'm just hopeful at this point.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up. I think I saw a John Heyman update. For what it's worth, it's no Bob Nightingale, at least. Apparently, Brian Hayes' X-ray on his left wrist is negative, so that's good news. Because if you watch the tape of the swing, anytime you see a hitter wince after swinging a bat, I always think hamate bone. I think all of us think hamate bone,
yeah, sure.
Especially when it was weak contact. It wasn't like the ball was on the outside of the plate too, so it wasn't like it was something that got him in on the hands. He winced and then he couldn't shake it off. He went to first base after drawing a walk, continued to complain about it, or at least showed discomfort. The trainer came out, cleared him. He ended up leaving the game after that. But negative X-rays suggest that there is no break. So maybe it's just a couple days. Maybe it was a stinger. Maybe, I don't know. But it's weird because, again, typically the type of contact he made and the way he reacted, I instantly thought, I'm like, oh, there goes a hamate bone. But hopefully Heyman isn't failing us right now. And it's simply nothing for Brian Hayes. Simply. But again, going back to what you asked, if you're in like an AL only format and you have Brian Hayes and somehow Eric Gonzalez is available, not sexy, not flashy, but it's who replaced them today. And so again, we're talking AL only where you need at bats matter, and you want to handcuff Brian Hayes, so to speak. Eric Gonzalez would be your guy.
All right. And then another player leaving a Saturday game, Andrew Benintendi, left Saturday's game with lower body soreness. Mike Matheny did tell reporters that he's being overly precautious and not to worry about anything. So Jared Dyson came in to replace him, I believe. Jared Dyson is Jared Dyson. But is there anything of concern here, Mike?
Just add them to the list of the TGFBI team players that just want to get hurt. I'm only concerned because apparently I have bad juju on that team. I don't know what's going on there. But in all seriousness, it sounds pretty ominous. Like it's a weird, I don't know what to take from this for Benintendi. So he's a guy that was fringe rosterable anyway in shallower formats. We're all hoping for the bounce back, but he's starting slow. Spring training was okay for him. Batting second, obviously, but there's replacements on his own team, which we'll get to in a little bit, that you could just target anyway. So Benintendi's a guy that in shallow formats, I'm already ready to I think we were talking about this a little bit. I'm in a turn and burn mindset still after last season. I'm having a hard time being patient, but Benintendi, we're talking about almost a season and a half of being less than average, the nice way of putting it. So a slow start paired with whatever this is going on for him makes me less interested in holding tight, especially if we don't get an update sooner than later.
Yeah, definitely something to look at come bid time on Sunday evening. If you have to make that cut decision and there's somebody you really want on the wire, something really negative comes back, I wouldn't worry about cutting them free. But it's that gray area that makes everything a little bit more difficult. Kevin, you're the Royals fan. Are you worried about this?
I think he would have stayed in the game if it wasn't 10-4. He has been diving around in the outfield. He's off to a slow start at the plate, but he's made some great defensive plays. He's probably just banged up a little bit. I don't think I agree with the synopsis you read. I think it was just totally precautionary.
All right, so that's it for news and notes. We're going to go into our what did we learn section, where we break down some of the FAAB recommendations we made for last week and the results that we might have seen across different leagues. But first and foremost, we brought Mike Kurland on, like I said, lineup king. And I heard you on another podcast, Mike, call this the bane of your existence, as you found throughout the course of the offseason. But I, for one, want to just personally thank you for doing the work that may have given you an ulcer. I'm not sure, but it's good work. We referenced it a couple times here on the pod throughout the offseason. And I know, I think you tweeted a screenshot of it at one point, but like anytime I was on the sheet, there was anywhere between 50, 70 people looking at the sheet at any one given time. So it's obviously something that was very useful across the industry, and then with people just needing an extra reference point. And so what I want to spend, I don't want to spend too much time on you, why you made it. I think it's a lot of that's pretty obvious. But what I want to know is, what did you end up getting out of it after it was all said and done? And then I'm curious to know if any of that work actually came to fruition. Any of the things that you noticed in spring training has actually shown up in the first couple of days of the regular season, or has it all just been spring training? Don't worry about spring training. What are some of the things that you took away from it?
Trust me, I'm so happy that it was not for nothing. Like, for lack of a better term, I'm so happy it was not for nothing, because that was my biggest concern. Because I'm like, oh crap, I'm dabbling in a spring training project. This can only go wrong. But no, first off, I called it the bane of my existence because I actually ended up finding a couple people who I ended up compensating for their time as well, because I don't believe in people working for free. It's a thing of mine. That's why even when I started I started a site a long time ago. That's the thing about people don't know. It was like, it lasted like 3 months, but I paid my writers, just to give you an idea. So I always believe in paying people for their time. It's just a thing. It comes from working in this industry. We know time is, it's valuable. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. I'm not holier than thou. I don't want to act like it. But this thing, man, it took before I got them to help me, it was literally like 3 hours a day of just mining stuff and then inserting it manually. And I'm like, because I'm not tech, you would think I'm tech savvy with the stuff I do, the videos, that stuff takes hours to learn. Like, it's a lot of, like, it might be a 2-minute video, but it probably took me 3 hours to make or so. But that was before I learned how to do half the stuff. So like I said, a lot of it's manual, just labor. So yeah, man, it was a lot of work. I know you didn't really care to hear all this, but I can't help myself. Like, it was crazy because I wasn't sure if it was gonna be worth it. And I guess this long way of me saying, honestly, I really think I got a lot out of it, because not only did it make me more familiar with some tendencies, but we're seeing some of that stuff transfer into the season. And a couple examples are the Red Sox have been pretty much up front from like go. Cora was like, hey, this is our lineup. And day one, we've pretty much seen it, like especially the top 5 with Kike Hernandez leading off, all the way down to Rafael Devers batting 5th, in between with Verdugo, JD, and Xander. It's pretty much been the top 5. Now, we have seen Renfroe, oddly enough, so far. We don't know if we're talking a couple games in for these guys, but Renfroe might be in a platoon ? I don't know. But other stuff, I've seen a lot of stuff. The Indians, actually, if you look at, the Cleveland team, they towards the end of spring training, I thought it was just to get their guys reps because they decided to send every center fielder down with Zimmer going down and Mercado. But no, they've actually held on to the Luplow Gamble platoon at the leadoff spot. That's something that we saw at the end of spring training. I thought it was just for reps. That was something that surprised me that continued into the season. The Blue Jays, surprisingly, the Blue Jays showed their hand and kept to it. The Yankees, the Cubs, actually, with Baez batting 6th, at least against righties. Today, he bumped up against a lefty. Ian Happ, however, we heard rumors that he would not be sitting against lefties, sat against the very first one. So that's something to monitor. That was something that they weren't showing that in spring training. So, and I was buying into Happ playing every day. It's still early. They still have Jock that didn't sit today against lefty. They have Jason Hayward, who hit a home run against lefty. But I think what I'm getting at is that there's so many lefties that they could sit that Marisnik will get his playing time against righties. But likely we'll see Happ get days off. Peter, that's how they're going to alternate their days off against some lefties. So that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. But Rangers, dude, honestly, I'm surprised. If you go back and look at the notes I was making, look at the lineups that they were putting out, the Braves, the Phillies, like you saw a lot of this stuff. Like it was great. I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised because I was not expecting so much of it to carry over into the regular season, which is great because guys like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a name now. Like, of course, I'm like guys like blank, guys like Jed Lowry, irrelevant, 99% draft season. But if you play in draft champions leagues like I did, you better believe I was grabbing him in the back end of those last 5 rounds because he's playing every day, second base for the Athletics. Jed Lowry, a guy who couldn't play more than 5 games for the Mets in 3 years, whatever it was, playing every day and healthy for the Athletics. That stuff matters in those deep formats. Yes. So apparently Jed Lowry can stay healthy, but my TGFBI team cannot. But
you should probably bid on him.
But in all seriousness, so to bring it all back into what you're saying is that surprisingly a good amount has stuck, and stuff like Laureano batting second, although I always thought it made sense, they weren't showing that. So it was a good surprise because you knew Laureano was going to bat top 5. So seeing him bat second while healthy, because apparently he can't stay healthy either, plays too aggressively, which is awesome, but awful because apparently he hurts himself. So like stuff like that though, Haniger leading off, Ty France sticking in the 2 spot with Crawford batting 9th. That was something we saw. But the thing was it's confirmation bias on my behalf because I had to fight off a lot of naysayers because you mentioned it's just a lot of people looked at, it's just spring training. There's a few things in spring training that matter. I would say with hitters, you want to see who's striking out and who's walking a lot because we've seen that, like, for instance, Yelich last year came into the season striking out a ton in summer camp or spring training or whatever. And then that carried into the regular season. The strikeouts carried. He has issues we had issues. We see stolen bases for teams. Like I like to see like teams that are willing to sacrifice their guys on the base paths to injury in spring training when it doesn't count. You think, that's just going to carry over. And we saw Jazz Chisolm, at least prior to recording, stole 2 bases today. And he was a guy who stole 3 in a game in spring training, 4 overall. So like it just stuff like that I think matters, and lineups, in my opinion, matter because we see a lot of them following into the season. So Benintendi was a 2 spot hitter all spring training. That matters. Now, like he's a guy that I was interested in because playing time and at bats were there on a team that should let him try to get it right. Sorry, I rambled. I love this stuff. Obviously.
Oh, that's perfect.
I can ramble. I could just ramble about this stuff. It's a gift and a curse.
Yeah, I think the one that I was looking at the most, at least late, was Tampa Bay, and just seeing
that was the one that I couldn't get a handle on, except for Susugo. I thought Margot or Susugo would lead off, and they even said Susugo would, but I was hoping for Margot because Margot was actually playing well. Susugo has sucked all spring, and he hasn't done much. I don't think he's done anything in his first few starts, but it's only a couple starts. But still, I think the fact that they were willing to put Susugo up there because that's where they usually hit Choi. I think Margot has a chance, and I think I'm rooting for Margot to get that chance because he showed in spring he's hitting well in spring. He's hit a couple. I think he had a couple hits today. Hit a home run yesterday. Mm-hmm. So Margot is coming around. There's room for him to hit the top of the lineup because they're showing a willingness to put someone there. I think Margot can earn his way up, and that's kind of something to watch for. That's why I've continued. You mentioned I'm continuing into the season because I think stuff like that matters. Like if I write up, I'm actually doing the article when I get off this podcast, and it's going to be. I'm looking at all the 3 days of lineups we've had plus end of spring training, and I'm trying to give risers and followers and why. And Margot is a guy that they showed a willingness to put him in the top lineup, and I think you said I think he hit second today.
Yeah,
right behind Meadows.
So right there, but there was no Rosarena, no Brandon Lau. That was the big thing about today's lineup. So maybe they feel confident, or maybe they're testing it out. So maybe Margot can stick if he continues to hit better, and that's something to point out, worth monitoring because something like that matters because. The Rays will run hot and cold. They don't care. They'll run whoever's hot up at the top. They'll run whoever's cold. Like they'll bench anybody who's cold or move someone down who's cold. So this is a lineup you want to target hot and cold hitters on because there's a chance for more at bats, more playing time, and Margot fits that bill. So stuff like that matters. That's why monitoring the lineups matter because you can see a manager's mindset. I think again, some more than others because the Rockies think that they're the Rays, but they're not. But they try to be, and that's a team that forget trying to figure that team out. I'm done. God. Fuentes is
that's
a
new
podcast, but McMahon is not. Like I'm done.
Hilliard hasn't started a game.
Nope. Well, and Owings has started 2.
Yeah, but he stole 2 bases on opening day.
Yeah, but who started them? besides DFS, who started them? AL only guys that are desperate for at bats. Yep. You know what? I have a league I started them in. 30 teams, salary cap.
There you go.
That's why. 30 teams. So yes, and I honestly, I forgot I started until this moment because I had to think of how deep of a league would you start Chris Owings. That's how deep of a league.
I think something that I'll be interested in, this might not be something you're looking at, or you might be, I'm not sure, but
Maybe.
as you continue to, look at these lineups and see the trends that are happening, we hear, you said it just a little while ago, there are certain teams that will play hot and cold hitters. They'll move their lineups around, and they get this stigma, and they're like, this is the team that will do it. But I'm curious. I guess I'll be curious to see if there's any what kind of statistical data there will be of showing, hey, this team actually does do it, and this is when they do it, or how often they did it throughout the course of the season. And obviously, you need at least a full season of data to really be able to pinpoint that. So that'll be something I'll be looking at through your work, and I'm hoping it's something that you'll be able to analyze a little bit deeper as you're looking at this every single day of your life.
Dude, it's become a habit now. Every day without trying, I'm tweeting about lineups. Like,
I've noticed that.
I can't. It started last year because I was doing it daily on Twitter, just as tweets, as threads. And honestly, I get this weird enjoyment looking at lineups, but then I get this weird anxiety waiting for them to drop, especially when it's like a Saturday where it's an all day slate. And you're just waiting for the afternoon. Then around 3, you're waiting for more. And then when I'm late and someone's tweeting about it before me, I'm like, no, I got to get out there and put the information out. And it's like a bad habit now, though, because it legitimately affects my day. Because I'm over here just on my phone staring at lineups. Like, it's, I don't know, but it's a good thing, though, because obviously it gives me, it helps in deeper formats, I should say. Because of TGFBI being a 15-teamer, you get the idea of these names. And I mentioned Michael Taylor. I think again, another guy I like to talk about. But the problem is that he's owned in he's rostered in all these formats, in all those leagues, I should say. And that's like frustrating because we're playing with smart people. Dang it, Scott White.
Got it.
But yeah. Anyway, sorry. Again, I can ramble about lineups all day. It's literally, you're right. That is literally become my existence. Like Twitter, I think I've been called the lineup guy, so I've taken it and run with it. I'm the lineup guy. It could be worse. Again, I've been called worse. Lineup king is way better, way cooler. But
get yourself a burner Twitter account and make sure you grab at Lineup King if it's available.
I'm on it.
All right, Mike, that's incredible. And if anybody hasn't had a chance to look at it, it's still great data to look at and see what he's been doing this spring. And like I said, Mike's going to continue to be analyzing lineups throughout the course of the season. I'm assuming you still have it pinned on your Twitter handle as a pin tweet, a link to those lineups. And of course,
yes,
you
sir.
can check that out at Mike_Kurland over on Twitter.
Bookmark right here.
There we go. Kevin's watching it right now.
Until next year.
Yeah. All right. And then, so what I want to do is just really quickly go through some of the recommendations we made last week and Mike, get your 2020 vision on this. I can't believe you guys recommended this, or yeah, that seemed like a good bid. And what we saw, at least in TGFBI leagues, what we saw these players going for. And a couple of guys that we recommended were more 12-team based, so they were rostered across the board. Justin Upton, the aforementioned Emmanuel Margot, Elvis Andrews were all rostered across Tapia as well. So I'm not going to go into them, but Jay Bruce, I think Kevin, you put a $15 bounty on Jay Bruce, and his max in TGFBI in the first FAAB period was 133. And there were, I think, 2 or 3 other bids right around the $100 mark, but the majority of the bids were right around the recommendation. A couple were a little higher in the 40s, 30 range. I know I picked him up for $9, so it's one less guy that you can go after, Mike. Sorry to fill your roster. Michael Franco went for very similar, max bid, 132. Both these guys had a min bid though of $1 and were picked up in about 14 or 15 respective leagues across TGFBI's 29 leagues as well. On the speed side, Cedric Mullins and Tim LaCastro were both picked up in a few leagues. Mullins 10 leagues across TGFBI and LaCastro in just 3, with Mullins max bid of 88 versus LaCastro's 19. So we put a $10 bounty on both. And what we said is that between Margot, Andrews, Mullins, and LaCastro, if you're really desperate for a speed spot, just throw a flat bid of $10 on all these guys and hope you get them. And more than likely, if you did that, you were able to at least walk away with LaCastro, where his min bid was $8 and only 3 leagues picked him up. So more than likely you were able to at least get some kind of speed option onto your roster if you took that advice. The aforementioned Yoshi Tsugo was only picked up in 3 leagues. Personally, I think that was a little surprising to me, only because he is leading off, to your point, Mike, that he wasn't picked up in a little bit more. I know that he struggled in spring. I know he struggled last year entirely as well. But if he is going to get that kind of run in Tampa, I think that this was somebody worth it. He was my last pick in our TGFBI draft as well as a kind of a flyer to see where he would end up. I was happy to see that he is going to be leading off at least a good chunk of time, at least to start the season, unless Meadows is leading off apparently. And then he did go for a max bid of $44 with a min bid of $2. And I expect him to get first base eligibility to go along with third base and outfield that he already has relatively soon, as he's manning first base for Tampa on the regular, it seems. So this was a good one. So we looked ahead last week and looked for guys who would probably be getting 2 starts this week. And as we'll get into a little bit later, it's not pretty, but there are some options. And one of the options we mentioned was Brett Anderson. I know that scares a lot of people. There were 2 people across TGFBI that took our advice and grabbed him for $2 and $1 respectively. And both of them are on this podcast right now. So he'll probably be in my starting rotation next week. We'll see. I still get to make that decision, but I only lost $1 on him. Kevin splurged and threw $2 his way just in case. Adbert Alzolay of the Cubs, who secured the number 5 spot in that rotation, only got picked up in 1 league for $72 of FAAB. I believe he was rostered.
Yeah, he was already rostered.
He was rostered in pretty much all the rest of them. So now he should be across the board. Logan Allen, we recommended $2 bid there. He did get picked up in 12 leagues, and it ranging between $55 and a single dollar as well. Ian Kennedy and Adam Ottavino were the recommendations for closers. I am sorry for anybody who spent the one team that spent the $79 to pick up Ottavino. To be fair, we only recommended $25 on that, so not fully our fault there. But who's to say he won't walk into a couple of vulture saves in the next couple weeks or months as well for Boston, if Boston can actually get themselves into a situation where they can actually win a game. Ian Kennedy, max bid of 182, min of 1, but he did get picked up. I think he's the second most picked up player across the league. TGFBI leagues at 21 teams out of 29 added him to their roster as well. It was our wild card recommendation, but he was already rostered in 15 teamers. I'm going to be going into a little bit more detail into this stuff in a weekly column over at Pitcher List on Tuesday. So look for that, breaking down a lot of the FAAB action across TGFBI. So that's 15 teamers. And then also looking at online championships as well. So that's 12 teamers to get a good glimpse of what's going on in these high level leagues, high leverage leagues where there's a lot of money on the line. And even if you're listening to this and you don't play NFBC, I think it's really good information to see what the trends that are happening in these types of leagues. And you can translate that into your Yahoo, CBS, ESPN leagues as well, especially if they're still 12 teamers or lower. Anything that you guys noticed through this first FAAB run? And it's first FAAB. My biggest personal takeaway was the fact that of how much money was actually spent, at least in TGFBI. And I know we drafted early. Mike, you mentioned that off air a little earlier. I know that we did draft earlier than a lot of the leagues that drafted right before the season started. Most leagues were finished by mid-February. But there was one of the 29 leagues, there was one league that spent $1,500 of their, that's on average $100 per team of their FAAB. And just personally, that's a lot of money to be spending in the first week when you've got 30 more FAAB periods to go. I know that the other side of the coin, people who did spend a lot of money might argue the fact that if you can find the right fit for your team, they can make the most difference being on your team all season rather than waiting to have the hammer in July or August and then only being able to get the fruits of that labor for 2 months or so. But is there anything else that you guys might have noticed as you're going through your leagues? It doesn't have to be TGFBI. It can be we all play in more than a handful of leagues. Is there anything else you guys noticed that kind of surprised you? Kevin, did anything that stood out in your leagues?
It shouldn't have surprised me because we know the value of saves in Roto and even head-to-head category leagues. However, I was caught off guard by the amount of money spent on some guys. We still don't know if they have the job. We don't know if Ian Kennedy's the guy in Texas. And there was a lot of money spent on guys like him. I knew that my bid wasn't enough to get him, but I was shocked at how much more he went for. And he wasn't the only one. $400 for Tanner Scott in a league, if I'm remembering, and we talked about it off air. Yeah, that is insane to me. And now Valdez has both of Baltimore saves.
Hey, you swore you weren't going to bring him up.
Do either of you really want Valdez though?
No.
Even though I can't wait to see how much he goes for.
He's going to go for a lot of money tomorrow night.
What, you have to do a keep him honest bid on him.
Sure.
Like you have to put like a 10 spot on him. Like you don't want him. You hope you don't get him for $10, but at the same time, you like for $10, the guy's closing. Obviously, I feel like he has more job security. Valdez, that is, has more job security than Michael Givens ever had in Baltimore, and we wished for Michael Givens to be a thing for years over there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of money spent on closers for sure. And it was interesting. It was, to say the least, it was interesting. Yeah, so look for a little bit more breakdown. Mike, is there anything else that you noticed across your leagues that kind of stood out differently?
I saw Josh Rojas go for quite a bit of coin, actually. Like I saw him like anywhere from 130 to 150 on average, almost it felt like. At least in leagues I was in. And not that I'm against Josh Rojas. He's leading off regularly. He's coming off a strong spring. He fixed his diet. There's a whole bunch of positive things in Josh Rojas's corner. But it's still Josh Rojas. Like he's yet to do it. And I felt like spending 15% of your FAAB on like the first week. I guess people are expecting him to have the breakout year, so I get it. And he was available in a lot of leagues because of when we drafted. The playing time wasn't a certain thing. And now Ahmed's out, so he's been playing shortstop. When Ahmed comes back, you should see Rojas move over to second. He should continue to hit in certain spots of the lineup. But when Calhoun comes back, does he still lead off against righties? I don't think so. I think Calhoun gets that back. So does Rojas still hit at the top, or does he slot closer to the middle or bottom? There's a lot of just ifs and like potential. And I don't know if I personally wouldn't have felt comfortable spending as much. I actually am in a tag team with Zach Waxman, and we are in an NFBC tag team thing with a bunch of smart people. And I think it was Dave McDonald that put up like 150 on him or something like that. Smart. And trust me, I got it. I understood it. And I know Dave likes him a lot. And this is a guy who would have been drafted if we drafted later in the offseason. So I understood spending on him, but I held strong. I was like, told my partner, I was like, hey, let's like maybe $75 on him. Just because I want to, again, keep it honest type of bid, but enough to where if we got him, I wouldn't be mad. And I'm okay with missing on him. And although it's easy to say, oh, I was right because he hasn't done much in 3 games or whatever, but that's not the point. I think he's going to be fine. I think Rojas is going to give you what you expect in terms of batting average and some stolen bases, but I don't know. I was surprised at how aggressive people were on the wire when it comes to Josh Rojas.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Just you mentioned briefly that you have to be okay with just not getting the guy.
Okay with getting them. Because keep it honest bid might get you them, and then you're like, oh, well, now I have them. So if you're gonna play that game, you have to be willing to be okay with how much you're spending on the guy too.
Yeah, there are plenty of guys. I go back to Jay Bruce, like he went from 140 something to $1. So it's like if you're in that league where somebody only bid $1, it was the only bid, and you want to put a keep them honest bid at $10. You're going to get him. So you have to worry about that. Josh Rojas was only available. He got picked up in all the leagues in TGFBI that he was not drafted in, which was only 4. So he was drafted in most leagues. He's now 100% rostered, but the max bid on those 4, he did go for $301 in at least one league. His min bid was that aforementioned $75 bid. Somebody was on the same, they probably did the keep your honest bid there, and they ended up quote getting stuck with him for $75. That'll definitely happen.
You want to bet we see him dropped a ton too because he had 3 bad games or whatever? Yep. Like that's
right. He's 0 for 2 as we're recording now on Saturday evening late here. And so what's that make him 0 for 11? And so if he sits tomorrow, he's going to be available in a lot of places next week.
And that's when you scoop him up on the discount. Or he's going to have a big weekend and he's going to be big, another expensive bid.
And then that helps too, because then he goes for big money again everywhere.
Yeah, but the problem is, like a guy like me in TGFBI, I could really use a Josh Rojas right now. I gotta find next week's Josh Rojas or next, but for cheap.
Like you said, he's dropped. He'll be dropped, and then he'll be able to pick him for cheap. There were a couple of guys that were dropped, at least across TGFBI leagues, that are now currently available. That I think some of their fantasy managers might want back, and that includes Jake, the aforementioned Jake Diekman, was dropped in 11 leagues across TGFBI. We'll see how much he ends up going for this week, even with the blow up. Tanner Hoke out of Boston, who had a great game today, was dropped in 6 leagues across TGFBI, and a couple other guys, but I think those are the 2 guys that kind of stood out based on recent performance, or at least recent changes that we've seen in their rosters. Miguel Cabrera, after hitting a home run in the snow, was dropped in 4 leagues across TGFBI as well. And if he gets first base eligibility, even though I know Kevin doesn't, he'll be somebody worth grabbing, especially for you to fill in a corner spot. or even the UT spot.
I like it if he plays 10 games and then stops.
Yeah.
Got to keep him healthy.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's get into this week's recommendations, if you will, or at least options that we see out there on the wire. This is our Give Me What I Need section. We're going to stick in the same order. We're going to stay with some power options that we might see on the wire for those who need a power boost or may have no power in their lineups because everybody is injured. I'm not naming any names there. But Kevin, is there anybody that stood out to you as you're scouring the wires of your various leagues?
Yeah, and the one that sticks out to me is a guy I was trying to keep an eye on throughout the offseason, but he was taking it easy. He was injured. He's been bothered by this plantar fasciitis for 2 or 3 seasons now. I'm talking about Evan Longoria in San Francisco. But for the moment, he has it under control, hitting in the middle of the lineup, 2 home runs already, and only rostered in 39% of TGFBI. So he is definitely someone that will be on pace for over 20 home runs over a full season, depending on how it's something that I think they can monitor throughout the season. He'll probably have a day off here and there, even though he's, quote, the everyday player, everyday third baseman. But if he's going to play 5 or 6 days a week and hit in the middle third of a lineup that is sneaky pretty good, then I'm all in here.
Yeah. Longoria caught my attention because, again, I'm looking at the waiver wire. I'm like, oh, man, what can I add? And he popped out because we saw Longoria do it like in spurts, and we see him do it in spurts here and there. But you mentioned the health being a concern. Another guy that you're just eyeing and not relatively, I'm looking at right now. It looks like he's owned 98% of the league, so he happens to be available in ours, is Adam Duvall. And I'm not all that interested in Duvall, to be completely honest. But if you're desperate for power, that's what he's going to give you. The problem is that's all he can give you. However, his counterpart that I like more is Garrett Cooper. I just wish Cooper had the playing time because it looks like they want to get him in against lefties. But he deserves more playing time, and I think he can give you a similar skill set in terms of power with a little more batting average than Duvall. So I like Garrett Cooper more. I just don't see the playing time there. But another guy that is getting playing time that is readily available is Yandy Diaz. And again, not sexy. Those biceps are huge, though. The power is there. It's just he won't, like, will he ever unlock it? I don't know. And what about Yermin Mercedes? I'm not sure what to do with this guy. He was 5 for 5 his first game. Last I looked tonight, he's 2 for 2. So he's 7 for 7 on the year. I think he has a home run tonight as well. So I think I'm in on Yermin Mercedes in a deeper format, like I don't know, TGFBI, where I'm desperate for bodies. So he's a guy that I'm interested in a bit as well.
Yeah, I can see Mercedes being the high bid winner this week for sure, just based on the 5 for 5 night yesterday. And then to your point, what he's doing today, everybody playing in these leagues has very short attention spans, especially things that happen closer to Sunday, weigh a lot more than what happened even just on Monday or Tuesday of that same week. Mercedes is the guy that he was drafted in one league in TGFBI out of the 29. And I will not be surprised if he's 100% rostered after Sunday for sure. He is only UT only, and that's across multiple formats. That's not just NFBC, but even Yahoo, who gives everybody every position that if they just ask nicely. He's still only UT in that one as well. I was talking to Kevin about this earlier. There is a non-zero chance that he gets catcher eligibility at some point in the season. I don't think it'll actually happen, but it is what he came up specializing in. He's not particularly good at it, but if they want to give him more run, if his bat is that good and stays that hot and they want to keep putting in different DHs and they still want to keep him in the lineup, that he could spell Zach Collins behind the plate as the second catcher, or even as Monty Grandal if there, God forbid, is any injury in that area as well. So I'll be curious to know what you guys recommend or what you think is going to be needed for all these guys. But I think if I had to guess, I think Mercedes is going to go for the highest amount here. It's just a matter of, are you going to be in that league that bids triple digits for him, or are you going to be in that league that nobody is paying attention or nobody cares and they just bid $1 when they happen to get him? I don't think that's going to happen as often with Mercedes this week as we've seen with other guys last week. Kevin, like, of these guys, you mentioned Longoria to start, like, is Longoria, or let's just do, would you rather, like Longoria or Mercedes in this FAAB period if you just need a bat?
For the cost, I'll go with Longoria. I agree with you that Mercedes, if not the top dollar bids of the week, will be close to it. I'll put a few dollars in. Maybe I'm in one of those leagues where nobody happens. And the thing is, it might keep the cost down a little bit, is the UT only aspect. That could keep it down a little bit. So I might get lucky. But for the cost, I'm going to count on getting Longoria.
So Mike, of the three guys that you threw out there, Duvall, Cooper, Yandy Diaz, I think you mentioned Cooper was probably the one that stood up for you the most, but not to put you on the spot, obviously we're in the same league, but how much are you going to be willing, even not in your situation per se, let's just say you have a averagely healthy lineup. You're not
average. Like, it's sad I can't even get an averagely healthy lineup right now. I have to make some tough decisions. 2 days. I have to make some tough decisions. It doesn't help you. Gallon got hurt and Rosenthal got hurt. And those are guys I'm not dropping. Not yet. But now you add all these knick-knack injuries on my team. I'm like, I don't know. I guess I could drop Benintendi. He's not somebody I'm stuck on. I'll drop him. You're welcome. He's going to have a great week. But those names aren't even the name. Those are just power guys. And Yandy, I hate it because I love Yandy's potential because he's one of the few Reyes playing almost every day, which is hard to say right now with Reyes players. But we know, it's hard to bank on his power because with negative launch angle and all that stuff. Cooper is the one I want to work out because I think Cooper has the most upside. It's just a matter of how much the Marlins are willing to play him. He played tonight, had a home run, but it was his first start of the season out of 3 games. I believe it was 3 games, 2 games. I don't know how. I'm losing track of the days already.
Yeah, they had a 4-game slate.
Did they? I see. I'm over here. Okay, I'm losing my mind. 3. Yeah, at least 3.
Yeah.
Sorry. They don't play tomorrow. Actually, they have Sunday off. It looks like. Huh? Weird.
That is weird.
Didn't know anybody had Sundays off.
Yeah.
That's weird. Anyway, either way, they had a 3-game slate. Point is he played one of them, and it was against the lefties. So that could already be concerning. If Michael Taylor's a guy I actually wanted, but he's not owned, and he's already universally rostered. I think. Looks like possibly. He's the one I want. I know you mentioned he's in roster in our league, so that pissed me off. But Kyle Isbel, just to skip ahead, I know he's not under power, but he's the guy I'd rather have than pretty much anybody I named because even though it's mostly for speed, at least there's a little bit of power there, but I just like his skill set better. The guys I mentioned just is all scary for one reason or another. Duvall is so much swing and miss in his game. I don't really want to take a chance, but we know with Duvall, if he gets hot, he's going to catch 5 home runs in a week and then be droppable the next. Like that's just Adam Duvall. I don't know, but I'm cheating here because I don't want to answer that question because none of those guys are interesting. If I had to pick, I guess Mercedes would be the guy, like you mentioned, and I think I'd be willing to spend a little bit on him, but I don't think I'm going to be the high guy because maybe I'm playing too scared with my money, man. Because Mercedes is he just?
I don't think it's being scared, man. We're 3 days into the season. That's what I keep reminding myself. And like you said, we're still in that mindset of the sprint. And I think that's a good thing. I want to try to carry that through an entire 6 months. However, it's been 3 days.
Yeah, and Mercedes, you're talking about a guy that, he'll get his at-bats in over Zach Collins probably because I think they're just going to play him if he's hot. But you have Grandal there. You have Vaughn there. Do they really want to keep Vaughn in left field? Are they not going to put Lori Garcia there anymore? I feel like there's a playing time crunch there.
Adam Engel's coming back too at some point.
So is Mercedes going to get squeezed? And if the bat cools down, we could see a couple games with them out of the lineup. So I understand the idea of Mercedes and how enticing it is, especially with how hot he started and the story behind it, how excited he cried or almost cried after his game. That's like awesome stuff. Baseball, just it meshes baseball and personal and emotion, and it's there. That feel good story is there. But I don't want to pay for the feel good story. I want to
pay for production. Yeah.
Read about it. Yeah, I like reading. But so I do think Mercedes is interesting. I guess I'm here with Kevin. I think Longo is the way to go just because I think the playing time's there. You ride the hot streak and it won't cost. He's the budget version.
The dollar store version, if you will.
I'll take it.
Nice.
My team will take anything other than zeros at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned he's not in our TGFBI league, but he is only rostered in 17%. That's Michael Taylor of Kansas City, who obviously started really hot. He's obviously an option across many different formats, even 15-teamers, especially 12-teamers. Somebody to look at in that area as well. I threw it in there as a flyer as well. Mike Tauchman was seen working out at first base for the Yankees. He is only 10% rostered in TGFBI and 2% of them started him this week as well.
That's Alex Chamberlain that started him.
More than likely, yes. And he might be a flyer option especially if he's going to gain that eligibility, or at least if he's going to be put into a situation where he's going to be playing more often for the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. So Kevin, this is the time to put your stamp on these things. Like, how much money for each one of these guys do you think that you're willing, or at least what percentage of your FAAB for those teams out there that have already spent $400 of their FAAB? Like, what percentage of your FAAB or dollars needed do you think it's going to take? Maybe not so much how much do you think you're going to spend, but how much do you think it's going to take in an average league to pick up these guys?
I think it'll take more, but as Mike talked about earlier, the keep it honest bid, I don't want to go too high on keep the honest bid on Mercedes for all the reasons Mike brought up, and they have other options and more options coming at UT only. So I'm going pretty low there. I'm probably going about 4%, and I don't expect to get him for that, and I don't want him for that. But that's that keep your honest that Mike was talking about. And then I think I'll get Longoria for half that. So that is probably my plan. Being the Royals fan, I love what Michael Taylor is doing, but we're talking career over 30% strikeout rate. However, it has always came with counting stats. So if you can absorb the 230, 240 batting average on your team, if you look at all of his projections, that they're pretty steady. And as a Kansas City Royals center fielder, you can double them because they all have him projected for 70 games. And he's going to play double that as a Kansas City Royals center fielder as long as he stays healthy. So you're looking at close to 20 home runs and mid-teens stolen bases if you can absorb the batting average. And I think I'm with Mike. I'd rather have him than Mercedes as well. I don't think he'll cost as much because everybody knows his history. He's boring. He's been around a while. But 18, 19 home runs and 15 stolen bases is nothing to shake a stick at. So I'd probably going 2% there as well, and may or may not get him at that price, but that's where I'll take my shot.
Yeah, I do worry about Michael Taylor just going for a lot more than that, just because, again, of that recency bias that we've seen. He's already got 2 home runs on the season. And to your point, he is going to play every day, which is huge, especially in the FAAB situation where you just need bodies at some point. Mike, any of the guys you mentioned, do you expect them to go for any certain amount of dollars? Or I guess what kind of dollars do you think you're willing, again, not based on your TGFBI team, but like in an average situation. Yeah. Like, Garrett Cooper, I'll just put your feet to the fire with Garrett Cooper because that's the one of the 3, Duvall, Cooper, and Diaz, that you lean the most, though you do worry about playing time. Like, what are you willing to put out there if you need a flyer on Cooper?
Cooper is probably the cheap man. That's my discount version. I can get him I got Guzman, for instance, I got Ronald Guzman for $6 last week. Sure. I could probably get Cooper for the same amount, to be honest. It wouldn't be surprising. People might see Cooper's stat line today and be like, oh, he did great. It was against a lefty. People obviously see he's only played 1 out of 3 games. That without a DH in the NL, or an injury, he's screwed. But going back to Michael Taylor, if I had Taylor available, I honestly would have I'm a little bullish on him. I would have put like 112, 113 on him. I would have put triple digits on him. I really like the skill set and the playing time. And for me, again, it's not an average situation, but even without it, man, I picked him up in 12 teamers. Like, I actually had Michael Taylor in my lineups today in my home leagues, in my daily formats. I recommended streaming him. I meant it. Even if he's streaky right now, he's playing every day, and power and speed matters. Batting average, if you can withstand a potential 230, 240, you ride that and you go pick up Michael Taylor. Because I think last time he was full time was in DC in like 2017 when he put up double digit home runs, double digit steals. And why can't he do that this year? In spring training, he had 2 caught stealing, so maybe he won't steal as much because he's not efficient. But Taylor, at least the intent was there, and we know with intent comes some success. We've seen him steal 14 more stolen bases for 4 straight seasons. So I think he still could do that and get close to 10 or so home runs. He's already at 2, so close to 15 or so home runs. Because I'm looking at his track record. I don't want to sit here and say we're talking about the same Michael Taylor who hit 6 home runs over 134 games in 2018. So I still think it's closer to the 12 to 15 range, even though he hit 2 already. But my point is, as your 5th outfielder, power speed combination like that, I'll take the 238 career batting average from him. I really would. because I want those stats that are like, people would fight right now. If you told me, hey, I can get this 15-15 guy at the end of your draft, you better believe he'd be universally drafted. Right. So I'd spend triple digits on him. Now, problem is 112, 113, 115-ish. Probably still wouldn't be enough. That's 11.5% of my, I almost have a full 1,000 still. So that's 11.5% of my FAAB. Maybe that gets it done, but there's a lot of people in desperate situations. If my team, going back to desperate situations, my team needed him, I might bump it up to 150, and I know I would regret it, but I need that production now because who knows how long half my players are out for. Some of which, like Josh Arnoldson, I have to consider dropping. I'm just waiting. I'm trying to be patient because I want to see if it's a minor hamstring, but hamstring connects to the calf. So one leads to the other. That's all it is. It's
domino effect.
I think that's how it works. It's frustrating. But yeah, so it's a matter of desperation, but I would honestly go triple digits on them considering what's available. Michael Taylor is head and shoulders, in my opinion, over Donovan Solano. I don't want that's empty batting average. Evan Longoria, we've seen that we've done like for the price difference. I get that, but there's a skill set difference there too. So I don't know. I'm looking at, like I said, looking at what's available. It's just not much.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe if the thing about Michael Taylor too, his home run, his first one, I think the second one was a little shorter. It was still over 400 feet, but his first one was 458 feet. It wasn't a wall scraper. And
that's real power.
The Royals have been interested in him for years. They have inquired for him in trade for a long time. So if there's something that they've seen all along, even though he's over 30 years old with a career over 30% strikeout rate, if there's something, there's just one little tweak that, hey, even if we can get you down to that 27% you had in the short season last year, who knows?
And that goes back to the whole, like when I think of the Royals, I think of what they did with Soler. That's why I'm like, I have this weird optimism. Like they know what they're doing with their players. Like that's why I was so big on Franchi last year. I'm like, oh, they went out and got Franchi. This is great news. But then they sold him off. I'm like, this is not great news anymore. What happened? Why? But yeah, it just makes you wonder, like, what do they see in Michael Taylor? Did they unlock something with him? Did they fix something in his swing? There's a lot that could be going on. We don't know yet because we haven't had enough time to really analyze that. But he's a guy I'm willing to take a chance on. But it goes back right into the next guy in Kyle Isbel, that he's like a budget version of Michael Taylor. You should be able to get him for closer to $70 compared to the 120 plus it might take you to get Michael Taylor. Because Isbel, although he's gaining some hype, he's still like an unknown commodity. And when you look at his minor league track record, there isn't much of one. High A was the highest he ever made it to. But there's been a little bit of power, a little bit of speed there. The speed's actually been more so than a little bit, double digits, even in minor leagues. So I think that the fact that he's showing out early on, he's a guy that I'll tell you right now I'm going after. So if you want him, you're going to have to pay up a little bit. I might be spending a little more than the average person on him, but I'd say Kyle Isbel's worth at least a $45 to $50 bid especially if you want to take a shot on upside. I don't see why not.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys like Isbel that probably are available, maybe not in every single league, but that kind of made rosters, opening day rosters that may not have been expected to make rosters. Another guy we're going to talk about, just mentioned, is Taylor Trammell, though he is 100% rostered in TGFBI, only 11% across Yahoo leagues. Jazz Chisholm, another one, all these speed guys that we're mentioning. And I think that it's not exactly Fabapalooza that we saw a couple years ago, but it'll be interesting to see what trends we find around these guys that are the nice new shiny toys. So like people just want to be able to say that they've rostered this guy. Isbel, to your point, though he's only been in high A officially, obviously did some stuff at the alternate camp last year and did enough during the spring training to earn a shot. And it seems to be the everyday right fielder in Kansas City. Kevin, we'll move right on into the speed section. What do you see in Isbel? And is this the guy that, especially as a Royals fan, I know you like to fade Royals players in general just to not show your biases, but is this somebody that you think you'll be going after this week in FAAB?
I just am afraid that I overpay for Royals, so I err too far the other way often. But the thing about Kyle Isbel is, first of all, he was a college player, played 3 years at UNLV, drafted in 2018. That was the year the Royals took 5 college pitchers in the first 2 rounds of the draft. And then Kyle Isbel was the first hitter they took in that draft. And they were ecstatic to get him. They did not think he'd be available at the point they took him. And when you're looking at his minor league numbers, 2019 at high A doesn't look good, but he was recovering from a broken wrist. So if you toss that out, everything else is amazing, including the Arizona Fall League in 2019. He played very well there. I really wish we could have seen him last season. We can say that about every minor leaguer, but he is probably one of the top 10 that I wish we could have seen last season, because then we may have saw this coming. And I think, as Mike said, he's here to stay. He is the Royals right fielder and has hit at every point in his career except for a portion of 2019 when he was recovering from a broken wrist.
I just upped my bid listening to you. I'm not exaggerating. I won't say what, but I did up my bid. Come get him. Come get him, man.
Yeah. So we put him.
I'm desperate.
We put Isbel in our speed section. He does have a little bit of a power speed combo as well. I know I recommended Isbel in my speed pickup column over at Pitcher List as well. Just in the short term, I agree. I think that Isbel is going to be a guy that's going to be in the lineup in Kansas City all year, pending injury, pending just a really bad cold spell. There's something to be said about, Kevin was talking to me about, he reminded me about this earlier. It's just the time manipulation doesn't just happen at the beginning of the season. You can send a guy down for 3 weeks at pretty much any time in the season and gain that extra year of eligibility. So there's always a possibility that happens. The Royals don't seem to be doing that, though. The Royals don't seem to be that team that is manipulating too many of their guys. Obviously, they didn't call Bobby Witt up to start the season. He's a guy that never made it past rookie ball. So it's not too surprising per se. But I can see Isbel being in the lineup all season. This coming week, he doesn't really have really good matchups as far as stolen base opportunities go. But the week after, he does face the Angels with Max Stassi, who led the league in stolen bases allowed, and Kurt Suzuki, who, while with the Nationals, was third with the third most stolen bases allowed as well. So there'd be some opportunities for Royals in general to run against the Angels, I think, next week. So I won't ask Mike because he's not going to tell me. But Kevin, what do you think Isbel's bid's going to end up being? I think he's going to be right up there, to be honest. He was already picked up last. Some people got a little excited about him in TGFBI last week, and he was picked up in a few leagues already. So I'll be curious to see the difference in bid numbers.
Yeah, the thing is, now he just hasn't made the team. Through 2 games, he's performing very well. Right, he's hitting over 500, scoring runs, driving in runs, playing great defense. The thing that is curious to me, and I think it's more game script than anything, but the Royals through 2 games as a team have not attempted a stolen base. But opening day, first inning, they're down 5-0. They come back, go down 8-5, and then end up winning 14-10. Today, very similar. They were down several runs, and then when they came back, went up several runs right away. So it may just be game script, as I said, but coming into 2020, there was a lot of talk about Mike Matheny doesn't like to run, and I was pleasantly surprised at how much they did run in 2020, but it is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I believe they led the league in attempts last year, if I'm not mistaken. And my point is,
need your negativity right now, man. Keep that negativity to yourself, okay?
Isbel is rostered in 15% of TGFBI leagues right now, and I believe that's all from the 6 pickups that he had during the last FAAB period as well. So he had maxed out at $61. Did have a min bid at $1, so a couple of flyers in there, and somebody was pretty confident with a 6% of their FAAB going into week 1. So I think Mike's bid's probably higher than 61, and I think the majority.
It initially was 69 because I wanted to get clever with it. Oh, look at me! I'm a jokester. I'm funny. And now it's, I guess I have to up it a little bit.
I do think that I think the majority or the average bid is definitely going to be higher than that.
Yeah, but I'm afraid, I'd rather miss out than overspend. Or that might be a common mistake I might make, because I'm really in on the idea of not overspending, and I might be making a mistake. Maybe I need to open up when you start looking at what's available beyond him, it's, maybe I need to just make this my guy this week. You know what I mean? Because you start looking, it's getting thin out there.
Yeah, especially in 15-team leagues.
Yeah.
As we talked about, we mentioned a couple of guys that we might recommend. Taylor Trammell, Jad Chisolm, of course, 100% rostered across 15-teamers, more available in 12-teamers and Yahoo leagues and stuff like that. One flyer I wanted to throw out there for speed was just Anderson Simmons, 66% roster in TGFBI. He just has a really good matchup against Wilson Ramos and the Tigers next week, who tends to give up a lot of stolen bases. So if you're looking for a flyer in that area, Simmons might be somebody worth throwing a buck or two at just to fill in, especially if you just want to grab an extra stolen base. He's not a huge speedster, but if he gets the right opportunity and he's playing every day, he can be a compiler as well, at least for a week if you need a Band-Aid. If there's anybody listening that might need a Band-Aid somewhere in their roster. I wasn't looking at you, but it was directed at you. Sorry, Mike.
I understand. It's not personal. I get it.
We did not bring Mike onto the pod specifically to talk. Like, this all came up as we were pre-recording, and we were just running with it. Sorry.
And I like to, and I'm honestly, I like being the punching bag sometimes. It's a lot of fun because we've all had teams like this. It just sucks that my team is doing this in an analyst league where it's like everyone talks about it, everyone's in it. I'm talking to somebody who's in it with me, just to be like, hey, guess what? Look what's happening to me. Let's laugh at me together. Yeah, it's all in good fun. All in good fun.
I have a draft champions league where the only hitter on my bench that has a job is Josh Harrison. Ooh. And he, of course, didn't play this weekend. So I'm in bad shape going into next week in that one.
Yes,
and I can't pick anybody up.
Yeah. See, I like and I love, and I think there's like a love-hate relationship with me and DCs. I love DCs. It's one of my favorite formats, if not my favorite format, because I'm usually pretty well versed in the player pool, and if I'm not, that definitely gets me into the player pool. But again, you mentioned the downfall of those leagues. No ads and no trades, and it's 750 players deep, and I guarantee you, zero ownership is probably going to be a roster. 0% rostered is probably that Vasquez guy. Is that his name? I don't know who it is. I never even honestly can't say I've heard of him from the Orioles.
Oh. Valdez.
Yeah,
Valdez.
Cesar Valdez.
I said the name wrong. I said the wrong last name. I legitimately never heard of this. I know baseball. I like to think I know baseball pretty well. Never heard of this guy. Am I supposed to know who this guy is?
I think the stat I saw, wasn't he the oldest player to make his first opening day roster? I think that's pretty. Yeah, exactly.
He made his debut like 8 or 10 years ago, but it's the first time he's been on an opening day roster.
Yeah, so, and he's getting saves.
Yeah, exactly. It's the feel-good story of the year.
No, my feel-good story of the year is Mercedes. Give me him. But yeah, man, I'm so intrigued to see what he goes for in FAAB. I really am.
It'll be if Tanner Scott right before him goes for $400 in a league. I really hope the same guy gets Valdez for another $400. That would just be icing on the cake. I actually hope it doesn't happen. There's always that possibility. All right, so there are a couple of other guys in the speed column. Kevin, you want to, and these are more directed at 12 teamers, but we mentioned them earlier. Taylor Trammell and Jazz Chisolm, 2 rookies who made their opening day rosters. Do you favor one of them over the other, specifically for stolen bases?
Yeah, it's Jazz Chisolm, and Mike knows that much more about him and his situation than I do, being the Marlins fan. But he already had 2 stolen bases in a game. Yep. And if he's going to have the job, and he's another one of these guys that kind of surprised us a little bit. We knew he was battling for the job a little more so than some of the other guys we've been talking about. But it was fairly last minute that we did find out he had the job. And so he, as you said earlier, he's not available in TGFBI, but he is available in over 80% of Yahoo leagues right now.
Yeah, Chisholm's a guy I recommended. Like I tweeted out today, I'm like, yeah, if he's available, do yourself a favor and go ahead and put him on your roster. Chisholm's a guy that he's like what we want Michael Taylor to be. He's flashy. He's got the power and speed. In spring, I think he had 3 home runs and 4 stolen bases. He's carried over the stolen bases already with 2 in one game today, but there are holes in that swing. Very flashy and toolsy player, but Chisolm has a lot of swing and miss. So he could hit 230 to 250, but he could easily, I'm not saying this, like he can easily put up 2020. That shouldn't surprise anybody if he did that. So it's a matter of what you're comfortable with. Do you have a roster that you could take on the batting average liability? Because he will be that. He will run streaky. He will be hot and cold. But what's also more encouraging about Chisolm is that they played him against a lefty today. Him as a lefty played against lefty, and in a lineup where they platooned a few players. They sat Dickerson. They moved up Rojas to lead off in the process, and seeing, and then they brought in Cooper, as I mentioned. So they sat Brian Anderson. That was the other one. And Brian Anderson, oddly enough, for a righty, has reverse splits. He hits righties better than lefties. That's a weird stat. But I don't know. Maybe Brian Anderson just became a platoon player, which is crazy to me. I didn't think that was going to happen. But regardless, maybe he did. Maybe it's just a day off. Players take days off 3 days in the year. We see it, Ian Happ. But regardless, it's just one of those things that I want to take a chance on upside. I think 12 teamers, you need to find that flash. You need to find that guy that pops off the waiver wire, because that's going to help make a difference and be a difference maker in a league where, like, that stuff, like, you need that to stand out. And Jazz Chisolm, and he plays second base and I believe shortstop in Yahoo. I believe he's I think Yahoo, like you mentioned, he sniffs it. Yeah. He gets it, but I don't even think he's played second base other than spring training. I'm trying to think, but regardless, it doesn't matter. My point is the tools are there, the skill set's there. Give him a shot. There's got to be somebody. I would drop Benintendi for him. I would drop Brian Anderson for him. Give you guys their roster. Like, these guys are rostered in more leagues, so give you an idea of actual names I would drop for him. Yeah, and to your point, the 12 teamers, the upside is way more valuable, in my opinion. If nothing else, if you grab him and he doesn't work out, and the replacement level on the wire is going to be so much greater than in a 15-teamer or 30-teamer or what have you. So taking the chance on a guy like that, who's obviously already producing, is a lot more important in a 10 or 12-teamer as well. So even though he may not be rostered, he's only rostered 18% of Yahoo leagues across the board right now. So I'm in total agreement with Mike. If he happens to be available, make sure he's not after today. All right, and he's playing right now, and personally, I just don't see Trammell being an everyday guy come by the time Kelenic comes up, by the time Kyle Lewis is healthy and in the outfield or DHing or what have you and taking up those extra spots. I think that he's a good short-term play. I just wouldn't spend a ton of money on him to fill my roster. I don't know if you guys feel differently than that on that one. Kevin, you put him on the list. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree with what you said there 100%. I do believe it's probably short term, barring injury. And yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah, Trammell is, I think it's going to figure itself out. That's a boring answer, but I think that's what's going to happen. Injury being one way in, performance. Maybe does Ty France play more field and thus push somebody else and maybe open up the DH for them to rotate other players in, maybe keeping Trammell's bat? Because Trammell's bat, I don't think they're going to send him down if he's hitting well. They just can't. Like, why would they do that to him at this point? They've already said screw the service time, it looks like. So I think it's going to figure itself out. Maybe they trade earlier than expected because we all expect Haniger to be out. Maybe they make a point to go push for a trade once Kelenic and everyone else is healthy and up. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's a lot. There's a lot of ifs and buts and what coulds. So I get it. I'm not going to go out of my way to make sure to get Trammell. I do have him in a few leagues though. But it's more like riding the hot hand. If he slows down, it's like one of my first cuts type of deal.
I think the biggest worry for me with Trammell is how many times he's been traded before finally getting into a major league game. And now I think my sense of what Seattle is doing is, all right, let's throw him out there and see what we got. But we're not going to mess around. We're going to see if he's going to do anything. And if not, we're just going to cut bait. It's my sense of what they have going on up there.
That could happen. Somebody actually asked me, because I guess something else I was doing a lot last year was just the side-by-side videos. I was like, I can go find one. Why not? And sure enough, Trammell's a guy that actually has a little bit of a mechanical change and swing change going on. Looks like he's simplified things. He opened up his stance a bit, looks more relaxed, looks more refined. And as a kid matures, and remember, he's a former top prospect, things like that can just take a little bit to click. Maybe he always got by on his athleticism and realized, oh, I can't just be an athlete at every level. I got to be more of a ball player. You don't know. We have no idea how he's matured, how he's changed. Maybe he realized whatever he was doing wasn't working and he made those. That's why prospecting is so much fun, because they can have all the talent in the world. Doesn't mean they're going to work out. Or they can't have all the talent in the world. It's not working out and they adjust. And maybe that's what we're seeing. It's just too early to tell. And I'm personally not ready to give up on him. Although it's easy to, obviously, like, it's just because he hasn't worked out anywhere he's went. But they're giving him a chance, and I like to bet on potential. I like to bet on pedigree. He has both, and why not see where it goes at this point? And again, he's still he's available. He was very cheap on draft day. It can't hurt to just ride the wave, and where it takes you is a whole different thing. Is he going back into the ocean? Maybe, but is he staying on land? Also, maybe. That's how I look at it. I don't know. It's a weird way to describe a player, but that's where I'm at.
We'll go with it. All right. And then moving into our hit section, these are guys that, have good matchups coming up. They may be walking into a lot of playing time that we might not have expected, or they're just empty batting average guys. One guy that I saw getting a little bit more of a run than I think we might have expected is Donovan Solano. He's currently rostered in 32% of TGFBI leagues, batting third in San Francisco. I think it was expected him to be more of a platoon there. Mike, did you notice anything in the lineups of spring training with Solano where that might not have been the case, or are we just waiting for that platoon to actually happen?
I'm not sure what to think with the platoon situation because the Giants are they have a DH this weekend against the Mariners. And I honestly overlooked it for a couple of days before I realized, oh, wait, he's in a DH. There's a DH. So that threw me off. But other than that, I think maybe with La Stella at second base, because La Stella is kind of the right side, the strong side. But I don't know. All spring training, they had him hitting second or third pretty much all the time. I want to say third, actually, most of the time, behind Yaz and La Stella, which is what we're seeing early on. I don't know what to do here. All the guy does is hit. Every year he overperforms. He has this crazy BABIP, but Solano continues to just do what Solano does best and hit. How's he done this year? I honestly haven't even followed him because he's like a poor man's Reyes for me, or maybe he is a Reyes. That's not a bad thing. I like a Reyes, so I won't have him. He's batting, 500? Oh, that's what he was batting for today. Of course he's batting 500. Of course he is, yeah. So he's Luis Reyes, yeah, but he's the NL version. There's places for that, but I don't know. I honestly don't know how the playing time is going to play out because we haven't seen him without a DH yet.
Yeah, that's fair. That didn't cross my mind as well, the fact that they had the DH this weekend. And obviously that can take guys out of platoons just because you need the extra hitter in general. And if he can play the field, he can play the field. Somebody I want to throw out there and get your guys' take on that. And I think, Kevin, you had another suggestion, especially for 12-teamers on the list, and that's David Peralta. What is it about David Peralta that made you want to talk about him?
That he always does it year in, year out. And he's not available in any TGFBI league, but he's available in over 60% of Yahoo leagues. So in 12-teamers, hurting for batting average, he's a guy to consider adding at any time. And he's not going to hit 30 home runs again, but he'll hit 15. So it's not empty average as we think of. And Mike brought up Reyes. He's in 12-team leagues. He's available in a majority of them. If you're hurting in batting average, there's another guy to go out and grab. The problem is we really desire all of these counting stats, and most of the guys that give us those are a detriment in batting average at this point. Guys we're getting off the waiver wire. So when you're looking to boost batting average, they're hard to find in the 15-team leagues, but in the 12s, there's a couple out there.
Yeah, one thing to look at with Peralta and pretty much anybody in Arizona is they'd have a pretty favorable schedule next week as well. They travel into Colorado and then they host Cincinnati right after that. They have Monday off. They only have the one day off, but those 3 games in that first half of the week are in Colorado. So something to consider there as well. And like you said, he's going to get you that batting average already, but if he's able to add those, extra counting stats being in the Rockies, that's something that could definitely help you out. Definitely worth your time, or at least your attention, going into next week, if at no other time. All right, Mike, is there anybody else that kind of in this category, guys that might have been walking into more playing time than you expected coming up, or have good matchups coming up the next week that you might be worth recommending?
If we want to go deep, we talked about Chad Pinder a little bit with Laureano's injury, so that's one name, but Jed Lowry is a guy that, surprisingly enough, he's doing things, and just a boring name, but playing time's there. He's batting .333 on the year so far, with just 1 run. So I don't know. Again, I'm going deep, but if we're talking 12-teamers, obviously you don't need to go that deep. Do not roster Jed Lowry in anything shallower than 15 or AO only. Eli White's another name I like that they really seem to like him. Eli White had a really strong spring as well, and the team loves him. They've played him over Ronald Guzman. So I've made the wrong choice there between those two, but he's another guy in deeper formats, but that's where my head's at, is deeper formats. Gotta get my head out of the deeper formats. I'm trying to think of some players shallower. David Dahl, how about that? David Dahl coming on strong to start the year, had a good spring. And he's batting 600 right now in the season. Well, that's prior to today, so I don't know. He's batting. He had
another good day today as well.
Yeah, he's batting second. A guy who trended towards batting second towards the back end of spring. They stuck him there. He's staying there, and he's everything the Rockies wished he could have been for them so far this season. So David Dahl is a guy I think is criminally under rostered, and honestly, a healthy David Dahl is a good David Dahl. Sure, we can't bank on the health long term, but you're looking for somebody to give you a punch in the arm now, and he's going to probably do it batting second for the Rangers.
Yeah, I really do believe that Dahl, he had his choices. He had his choices of where he could go after being waived by Colorado. And I do believe that he chose the Rangers for the main reason of thinking he's going to be able to get the playing time that he was not getting in Colorado. Even when he was healthy, he wasn't always Rockies are going to Rocky type of situation. And so I do believe that he went to a situation where he could more guarantee that he was going to get the run that he needed to prove that, he could do what everybody thought he could do as a prospect and perform. So it's a good shout out there as well. All right. And then we're moving to pitchers. As I alluded to earlier, guys that have 2 starts scheduled for this coming week, it's not pretty. It's not too pretty. So Kevin, why don't you list off a couple guys that you noticed, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I just marked a couple down, and honestly, the one I'm riding with is the one from last week, Brett Anderson. And then not only did we mention him on the pod in my article at Pitcher List, I said I will get Brett Anderson for a couple of bucks, and I will be starting him next week for his 2 starts at Wrigley. Hopefully the wind's not blowing out like it was today. Typically not this time of year. Typically a nice pitcher's park early in the season, and at St. Louis. So that's the one I'm riding with. A couple others I looked at. Danny Duffy gets the Indians and White Sox, so that's not ideal. Brubaker of the Pirates is interesting to me, but he does have to go to Cincinnati, Great American Small Park, for his first start of the week before returning home against the Cubs. And then Matt Shoemaker is another one I was looking at, and I'm drawing a blank on who his starts are against. I apologize. Yeah, I'm riding with Brett Anderson as my 2-start player for this week.
Shoemaker's got at Detroit, and then he hosts Seattle toward the end of the week.
Not bad. So he's probably 2 on the list.
Mike, any of these guys on the list or anybody else you noticed that you'll be at least keeping an eye on for this FAAB period, depending on what your roster needs?
If you want to just, absolutely, this is absolutely like shot at the. Oh man,
that's what we like.
Jose deLeon is projected for 2 looks, and he gets to face Pittsburgh and the Diamondbacks.
That's nice.
At Arizona, home against Pittsburgh though.
So there you go. Kevin always talks about we're gonna add a section of the pod picking on Pittsburgh, and so we got our picking on Pittsburgh call out there. It by looks Mike.
Like how many innings he'll go is to be determined, but like we're talking about desperation because you mentioned there's not a lot of options. He's one that again, as of right now, is projected to go at least start the 5th, which suggests he should start by the end of the week because they have a 6-game series, that week, and then of course Nick Pivetta. Tampa Bay and at Baltimore. Wouldn't recommend that one so much. But he's another name I noticed. If Pivetta can be what we always hoped and aspired him to be, that'd be fantastic, but he has yet to show that.
He's going to do it this week to suck us all back in.
Yes, and then we'll start him against a gimme, and he's just going to be like, watch this. 9 earned run. Pivetta, how we loathe you.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what these guys, this whole list goes for, because they're all gonna get bid on in majority of leagues because they have 2 starts. It doesn't really matter how good or bad they're gonna be, even if they just go for $1 or $2 or what have you. Somebody's gonna be interested enough to like bid on all of them and make them all like conditional bids upon each other and just be happy that they get one of them. And so I'll be curious to see what the average bid goes for these. Whether they're all in like the teens or if, somebody's splurging because they just want they want those counting stats. They don't care about the ratios early on. I think that there's a lot of managers out there that they just don't think about ratios, especially pitching ratios early on because they feel like the season's a long season. We're not in that sprint anymore. And you have time to build that back up if you have a hit. But anytime you can get those extra Ks or those extra vulture wins here or there, it's something worth bidding on early. I think for some, I won't be. Like Kevin, I got my Brett Anderson share last week, so I'll just be riding with him. I probably won't be bidding on any of these guys this week. I'd be interested to see what the final bids end up being. And Kevin, any other good single matchups worth looking at? Have you noticed, or is it all 2 starts or bust?
I was mainly concentrating on 2 starts for this week. It has to do with the schedule. Most teams are only playing 3 games this opening weekend. There were a handful that had 4-game series. And then with the Mets and Nationals, of course, hopefully they're playing Monday. So we're going to be at the top of their rotation to start the week. Even the 3 and 4 guys for the Mets down to 4, Taijuan Walker. And then they have an off day, so they'll be right back to DeGrom. So there's not a lot there. And that's the thing. A lot of the teams have off days, not just this weekend. They may be off Monday. And if they're not off Monday, they're probably off Thursday. So we're not even seeing 5th starters for a lot of teams for a couple of weeks. So not a whole lot unless you've just really been hit by injury. But fortunately, as far as starters go, I think most of us are okay in that aspect.
Mike, I'll go to you. Same thing. Is there any other matchups you noticed besides picking on Pittsburgh with deLeon?
There's actually one guy we're picking on Pittsburgh again because one start, he's relatively available. I streamed him for 1 start this week. Jake Arrieta, 6 innings, 1 earned run today, or I don't know if it was earned, but he gave up 1 run to the Pirates, and he gets to double down against the Pirates next week at Pittsburgh too. So it's an even better ballpark, arguably. And I'm just gonna go with Jake Arrieta, 1 start. Those guys, he's probably a better 1-start option than like a Jose deLeon up for 2 type of thing. Like you just take I'm picking on Pittsburgh, especially if Hayes is out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good call, especially if he misses an extended period of time. Yeah, I think another guy that was dropped in a couple of leagues, Tanner Hoke had a great game today. I think he's going to turn some heads, and I think there's going to be a lot of bids on him as well in majority leagues where he's available. And so there might be some dollars spent in that direction as well. I'm pretty sure, at least in one of my leagues, he was one of my drops last week as well. So that's fun. All right. And then moving on to ratios, we're looking at long relievers that have opportunity to rack up a couple extra innings in a week, or just a hot hand or a new guy on the block. Kevin, you listed somebody on here, so I'll let you take the reins on this one.
I listed Carlos Hernandez, and it's honestly, it's not a homer pick, but it is because I do watch the Royals games. So I've got to see how he's used by the team. And I think he went 3 innings on Thursday, and that's the way he was being used towards the end of last season when he started making a name for himself. And that's the way he's going to be used, and may run into a win here and there. I don't think he's going to be an option for the back end of that bullpen. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. But he's a guy that will get some strikeouts because he'll get a few more innings. When he does pitch, he's more likely to get a spot start here and there than he is to be used at the end of games. But yeah, he's worth taking a look at in deep leagues, 15-team and up, AL only. He's not somebody you're probably going to be looking at in a 12-team league. But for what we're looking at here, long relievers that can get some innings, some strikeouts, and possibly run into a win or 2. He's a pretty good choice, I think.
See, a guy like this, I really like in a daily moves league, even if it is just a 12-teamer or even a 10-teamer, because if it's the guy who's going to go long, you can't exactly set your clock to it, but you have a general idea of when he's going to go next, how much time off he needs in between, quote, like starts or at least appearances. And I think being able to stream him in a daily move league is really beneficial, especially if he's, he's not going to hurt your ratios. Yeah, he gave up a couple of runs in his 3-inning outing already, but he did vulture a win. He did put up 5 strikeouts in those 3 innings. He's going to put up 5 strikeouts in 3 innings. That's going to be better than a lot of other starting streamers that you're going to grab. They're going to put up 4 or 5 innings and maybe not even get the 5 strikeouts. I like guys like this in those daily moves because I also don't mind bring them in and then cutting them loose and then bringing them back in because they're not a dime a dozen per se, at least not the good ones. But there are multiple, especially in a 10 or 12 team, there's a lot of them available that you can stream in and out. And especially if starting pitching doesn't get any better, those options might be better than those starters that are on your wire as well. Mike, is there anybody that you noticed in this category worth taking a look at?
I honestly missed the name. I think I had some connection issues. I didn't hear the name you said, so I'm hoping it's not Tejay Antone, because I feel like Tejay Antone isn't brought up enough.
Nope, go for it.
He was a hot. It's just as simple as he was a hot name.
Sure.
People wanted him badly. The idea of him being the fifth starter, and then once Antone wasn't named the fifth starter, we realized the lack of interest is there. But he still very much could be the guy you plug in your lineup, set him, forget him, could give you those ratios, those innings. And at the same time, we know that he can start. So a guy that is, I think he's still relatively available because he never won that spot. So people just can let him go, dropped him even. Guy that I have him on a few teams and I'm just rocking him in my lineup just for some innings.
Yeah, he was the guy along with Alec Mills that we recommended. Just if you did draft him, hold on to him. Maybe they're not going to be your first drops, because to a lot of things that you said, along with the fact that he could get some spot starts. He could be the guy that comes in and fills in for a struggling starter who only goes 4 innings, and Vulture win that way as well. And in all likelihood, when he is in there, he's going to put up quality stuff. He's not going to hurt you. So I didn't think he would be a guy. I wouldn't mind dropping him if you really had to, if you're in a pinch, but he wouldn't be my first choice. And that I'm going to hold on to that personally myself as well.
TGFBI, I have him.
Yeah. You might have to drop him then.
Yeah, seriously. Like all these little red suitcases are really upsetting me. Gosh. All right. Anyway, enough of that.
Moving on.
I'm going to keep just circling back. Oh, and I mentioned I had Eliezer Hernandez, who hasn't got his red suitcase yet, but will. Biceps issue.
Yeah, it'll be there when we wake up tomorrow, unfortunately.
Yep.
And Trey Turner, whose team hasn't played yet. Yay.
At least he's not hurt.
Yes, well, but who knows if they play, right? Or when. Yeah, we don't know if he has COVID. We really don't. We have no idea.
All right, and then we keep alluding to it. So we'll get right into the save situations across the league. A lot of committees / injuries have muddied the waters already early in the season, with between Trevor Rosenthal going on the IL in Oakland, Alex Reyes being named the quote-unquote closer in St. Louis for now, Greg Holland stumbling in his first opportunity again with the Royals, Anthony Bass over in Miami struggling as well, and then the aforementioned Cesar Valdez picking up both Baltimore save opportunities over Tanner Scott. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you as a Miami fan. Are you worried about Anthony Bass, and is Yimi Garcia the guy you would be bidding on in that bullpen to replace him if that opportunity arises?
I can't remember anybody uttering the term "I have confidence in Anthony Bass" ever. That term doesn't come to mind when I think of Anthony Bass, or that phrase. But we're talking about a guy who Bass had 5 saves last year with Seattle. Ratios were like 3.56 for a relief pitcher isn't great. Less than a K per inning. Like, the guy wasn't a closer. I think Miami went out and got him and said, "Hey, let's try to build some trade value here." That's all I'm looking at. So I think Yimi has to be the guy you go after. Or at least stash if you have space to stash him. But even then, I think it's the same idea. We know he has the strikeout upside. At least he showed it last year. I shouldn't say we know. Garcia showed the strikeout upside last year. Did grab 1 save. The ratios were there, though, and I think he's the guy that should be closing. With that said, I loved Vezia before we traded him, because whatever that reason was, still blows my mind for an older relief pitcher. Whatever. Anyway, so I think Garcia would be my guy to stash there in Miami. But yeah, it's not a situation. Honestly, I don't think you want a lot of that. I don't see, as much as I think the pitching is great in Miami. I think our offense leaves a lot to be desired. So we're gonna have a hard time in that division as a whole. It's a tough division, and we're at the bottom.
No matter how much Miami's up and coming and everybody's excited about what they're doing, that division is still not one you want to be in.
And then the Mets everyone's got better.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody got better. Yeah.
Except for us. We didn't spend any money.
You got Jazz up. You got better. It just you didn't get better at the same rate as everybody else. The problem is we're trying to go the Rays route without having, I lied. We have the Rays division is tough. So there is optimism, because if we can hit on prospects like the Rays have and build a team like the Rays have, then we have a reason to believe that we can compete the Rays have. It's just, we haven't yet. So I'm not, it's not, what the Rays have done is very difficult. It's not like people act like it's an easy thing to do. What they've done has been very impressive for baseball. Not that I agree with it, because it's obviously showing you can cut corners and still win, but in terms of finances, but I do the fact that there is a reason to believe in Miami going that route, because we have the elite farm system. We have solid young arms. We have talent. We're bringing it up. We're showing it. It's just a matter of if it all clicks. It's hard to do. All right. And then I'll move on to the other hometown team, Kevin, with Greg Holland stumbling in his first time out. Are you more excited for old man Wade Davis or young man Josh Staumont?
Yeah, I have Josh Staumont rostered on a good majority of my teams, not all of them. And Holland is still the closer, in my opinion. And this is why I defer to Mike when we were talking about Marlins and why I hit you up when I have a question about the Red Sox. It's not that we're just homers. It's that we are watching the games and we see things that don't show up in the box score. And I heard on another podcast that I was listening to earlier today, and they were talking about Greg Holland was the mop-up guy. No, the bases were loaded in the 8th inning with 2 outs when he came in. That was a save opportunity. And he got the strikeout, came back out for the 9th and struggled. And they went to Wade Davis. I don't think one blown opportunity is going to lose Greg Holland the job. But I don't think this is going to be his only blown opportunity either. Now, I was big on Josh Staumont all offseason, and I still like him a lot. I still might think Mike Matheny might go to the flamethrower that is very similar to Trevor Rosenthal, who he went to last season. However, Wade Davis, if you take a look at his career numbers and you get to 2013, his first year in Kansas City, he was still bad. He was still bad with a 5.32 ERA. But in 2014 was the first season they sent him to the bullpen. From 2014 through 2016 with Kansas City, his ERA was 1.00, 0.94, and 1.87. And part of that time was as a setup guy, part of that time as a closer. He went to the Cubs, and as a closer, saved them 32 games with a 2.30 ERA. Okay? The most saves he ever had was in Colorado. Of course, his ERA went up to 4.13. In 2019 and 2020, he was injured, and coming back from injury when he did pitch, he was still pitching in Colorado. He has never not been good outside of Colorado. And he was sitting at over 93 miles per hour in that first start. Now, granted, we only saw 8 pitches, and it was opening day. He was amped up, but he threw 3 pitches last season over 93 miles per hour. He was sitting there and touching 95, struck out the only 2 batters he faced on 8 pitches. I think Mike Matheny will give him the shot before he does Josh Staumont. Unfortunately for me, unless I have them both on my roster, I'm going to grab him. And I think I don't think it's going to cost anything. Now, some people will try to add him for a few bucks because he got the 1 save that the Royals have had. And tomorrow may make a big difference as well. If there is a save opportunity for the Royals tomorrow, it'll be Greg Holland. And I hope he converts it, because then Wade Davis costs nothing. And I think he's probably got the job in a month or so.
You heard it here first. Yeah, no, I can see Davis being like that stash pick. You got to be in the right situation to be able to throw $1 and stash a guy like Wade Davis with his recent history, regardless of injury or where he's been pitching, and be able to just hold on to him. He kind of, for me, this situation takes up that prospect stash that I was talking about earlier in the offseason, where I try to keep only 1, maybe 2 stashes at a given time, because at any given time, your roster can turn into Mike's roster and you're going to have to get rid of everybody. Alex, we mentioned earlier, I think we're all in agreement, like Alex Reyes would be the guy of this that I would probably bid the most on. I do believe that even if he were to be taken out of a closer role, he's still going to be able to present your roster with positive gains, whether it be in just the ratios or strikeouts. There was word that Mike said that they wanted him to hit 100 innings out of the bullpen this season. So that's a lofty goal out of the bullpen. And if that's better than that's better than a lot of young starters who are all going to be on inning counts throughout the season as well. So something to monitor there, see if they actually stay true to that word as they try to ramp him up to get back into the rotation in 2022. And then I'm not going to make you guys say how much you think we should be bidding on Cesar Valdez, but I am curious to see your hot takes. What do you think the max bid in TGFBI will be on Cesar Valdez? Mike, what do you I'm going to make you guess first.
You can make me guess, and I'm bidding 0. Okay, I'm bidding like 10 to 15 because I think realistically it's going to be like 115 to 120 range, and even then I might be underselling how bad someone's going to bite on this.
Kevin, what do you think?
Can you imagine if he gets a save tomorrow? Yeah, but 2 saves out of the gate, he's going triple digits. I'm not going to be anywhere close. I agree, 100%, Mike.
It might even hit 200 in a league, and I get it, I do, but I won't be the guy. I rather speculate. Because Whitgren had a bad outing, he might get dropped. I'd rather wait a week, pick up Whitgren, hopefully on the low, and see what happens there. You mentioned Staumont, guys like that. I'd rather just try to find the next guy, not bid crazy on this guy who it's not going to hold. There's no way, and if it does, I will be blown away, man. We've seen them play this game. The Orioles have done this. It all goes back to Michael Givens. Maybe I'm burned. Maybe I've been burned too many times chasing the Michael Givens save train. But man,
yeah, even when he was pitching, he would end up 15 saves is all he'd get. Because yeah, I agree.
All right, yeah. Not to mention that like they might have gotten 2 saves in the first weekend to play, but how many save opportunities is Baltimore going to collect throughout the course of the season? I understand that even bad teams win games and there are saves to be had from those teams. I roster Richard Rodriguez to the Pirates in multiple leagues because he's the guy, at least right now, and saves are saves, doesn't matter. But to spend that much triple digit fab on a guy that probably won't stick and is on a bad team, or at least a team that has a 0% chance of making the playoffs, according to multiple sources, it's just, not worth my time. One last guy I want to talk about before, Mike, we let you go, and that is another fun new toy that was just recently called up by Arizona's Geraldo Perdomo, and I'm hoping I'm saying his name right. Shortstop prospect, just got called up at least an NFBC time, just in time to be eligible for this FAAB period coming up on Sunday night. So is this a guy that we think that will stick, and is it worth our time to fill in, say, even a middle infield spot? Tell me a little bit about what you know about him, Kevin.
They've already said that this isn't to stay. They flat out said it. And Nick Ahmed is injured. They have other injuries. They can use him for a while. And if not before, I see him going back down May 1st when minor league season starts. That's the thing. Minor league baseball has not started yet, and it is not starting until the 1st of May. So if they can bring these guys up, let them get live game at bats and send them back down to continue to develop, especially when you do have a need due to injury at the time, it makes perfect sense. And they're not going to run him out there every day either, in my opinion. So I'm staying away. And I'm afraid some people might go a little overboard on this because he is a nice prospect. This time next year, we may be talking about this guy in draft season, not right now. But I just don't see the playing time. Now, later in the season, if he comes back up towards the end of July again, at that point, it could be a whole different conversation. But I just keep going back to they flat out said he's not here to stay.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. You hit the nail on the head. I have no interest in taking a chance on a guy like a Perdomo that they mentioned he's not going to stay. Why bother? Why take? Oh, if he performs, he'll stick. That's what they said about Bobby Witt, and that didn't go over well. So I'm good. I'm just gonna let someone else spend the roster spot and fab on him, and be willing to be wrong. Yeah.
The only thing I think he has going in his favor is the fact, again, Arizona has a really positive schedule moving forward for the next week and a half, and so to put in that, not even a keep your honest bid, but just like that flyer bid that you might put on if you're in one of those leagues that nobody ends up bidding on them. They just all stay away, and you can get them for $1 or $5 to stick into your roster that has a hole for a week and not worry about dropping them in 2 weeks. That's a direction you might want to consider going. But I'm in total agreement. I don't think there's a situation where I even go double digits. All right. I think that's going to wrap us up. I think we went a little longer than I quoted Mike. So Mike, I appreciate you. Mike texted me earlier and he's like, hey, how long?
We were going to keep it to our hour tonight before when we were off air.
Yeah. So sorry about that, Mike. I know you got a lot of work to do. Yeah. Anyway, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you've done. Why don't you let everybody listening know any of the other work that you're either working on or where they can find the work that you've already put out?
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you having me. I'm sorry it ran long. I get to talking and this is what happens. But you can follow me on Twitter at Mike_Kurland. I'm still doing lineup stuff. It's just taking on a weekly transformation. I'm about to hang up this call and start finishing up the article I worked on today. I'm going to try to get the podcast out tomorrow as well. Is it almost like an audiobook version of this article? So we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, it's just stay busy. I do some videos here and there. I write up random stuff. And as we start getting more into stats, I'll probably just doing more player analysis on what players we should buy and why, what players you should be selling high on and why. Really, I get really into the nitty gritty, but I try to break it down to where everyone can understand it. It's where I try to stay the middleman. I'll never be the smartest man in the room, but I like to just play that middleman. Like I can dabble with them and I can remain grounded, so to speak.
Remain grounded. I think that's a good way of summing it up. Yeah, Mike is definitely a great follow on Twitter. Make sure you guys are doing that as well. Follow all of his work as well. And Kevin, you have your written FAAB article, which will go into a little bit more detail about some of the guys we talked about here, along with a couple of options over at pitcherlist.com. That comes out on Sunday afternoon. Is that right?
Yeah, and the amazing editors that we have at Pitcher List that I don't have to, not that I don't have to, they want me to wait till late Sunday morning to get this in, just so it's as up to date as possible. So there may be a player or two added we didn't have a chance to talk about this evening, but yeah, that comes out every Sunday afternoon.
And that's going to do it for us this week's On the Wire. As always, make sure to follow us on the Twitter at On the Wire Pod and join PL Plus on pitcherlist.com so you can pick our brains and the brains of 800 members on the Pitcher List Discord. Whenever you make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and leaving a rating and review is always appreciated. Follow myself at 80grade on Twitter. It's all spelled out. And Kevin at HastingKevin. And those links to that are in the show description as well. And let us know on Twitter what your bids were, what they went for. We're always curious to see different league formats and what players are going for in various platforms and league formats as well. So we wish you the best of luck in all your leagues and hope you win all of your bids by exactly $1. For Kevin Hastings, I am Adam Howe, and with that, we bid you goodbye.
Start clean with Clorox, because Clorox delivers a powerful clean every time. Because messes happen. Because the charcoal mask, great, because why would I put that on my face when I could drop it in my sink? This is what I get for multitasking. Ugh, why is charcoal so sticky?
Hello?
Hey, Janice, I am so sorry. I thought I was on mute. No, we don't need to reschedule. I'll just stay off camera. Ooh, yeah, that happens. So start clean with Clorox. Use Clorox products as directed.